The morning the Heritage Fiber Mill burned to the ground, Vera Moss was hand-spinning Angora in her kitchen, 73 rabbits dozing in their climate-controlled barn, while every sheep farmer in 3 counties scrambled to find someone, anyone, who could process their wool. By noon, her phone rang. By evening, she was the only fiber producer in western Montana whose livelihood hadn't just gone up in smoke. 8 months earlier, Vera had pulled into the parking lot of Stillwater Feed and Grain with a check from her divorce settlement and a plan that made the cashier actually laugh out loud. Angora rabbits? Karen Dietrich said, scanning Vera's order. Specialized hutches, temperature controls, grooming supplies. You know those are like pets, right? Not livestock. They're fiber animals. Vera kept her voice level. She'd learned that from her mother, who'd run this same feed store before selling it to Karen's family. Don't explain. Just proceed. Honey, everyone around here runs cattle or sheep. Real animals. Real money. Karen's smile was pure condescension wrapped in hometown sweetness. What are you gonna do, knit sweaters? Process fiber. The Heritage Mill handles all the wool in this region. They're not gonna bother with rabbit fluff. Vera signed the receipt. I'm not asking them to. By the time she loaded her truck, half the store was watching. By the time she drove the 12 miles back to her 40 acres in the Bitterroot Valley, Karen had already called Vera's ex-husband's brother, who'd called the coffee shop, who'd called everyone. Her daughter Marion phoned from Seattle that night. Mom, Terry says you bought rabbit equipment. I did. With the settlement money. Yes. That money was supposed to be for rebuilding. For getting stable after Dad. She stopped. After Dad left you for someone half your age and dragged your name through every church coffee hour in the county. After everything, Vera watched the empty pastures through her window, land that had run cattle for 30 years while her husband made decisions and she made dinner. I am rebuilding. With bunnies. With a sustainable fiber operation that doesn't require a mill. Nobody's going to take you seriously. Vera had heard that before. 27 years of marriage to a man who'd pat her hand when she had ideas, who'd smile at his friends when she spoke at cattlemen's meetings. She was done being taken seriously by people who'd already decided she was decorative. I'll manage, sweetheart. After Marin hung up, frustrated, worried, embarrassed, Vera went online and purchased her foundation stock. 12 German Angora rabbits from a breeder in Idaho who'd been working bloodlines for 30 years. At the feed store the following week, Bill Kemper cornered her by the salt licks. He ran 2,000 head of cattle and spoke at the county agricultural meetings like he was handing down commandments. Vera, I heard you're getting into the bunny business. Fiber rabbits. Yes. Look, I know the divorce was hard, but you don't have to. He paused, searching for kindness. You don't have to prove anything. There's no shame in selling the land, moving to town, getting a regular job. She met his eyes. I'm not proving anything. I'm farming. With rabbits. With rabbits. He shook his head, walked away. She heard him tell someone at the register. She's lost without Jim. Poor thing doesn't know what she's doing. The rabbits arrived in April, magnificent creatures with wool that grew an inch per month. Vera converted her horse barn into climate-controlled housing. Angoras couldn't handle Montana's temperature swings without help. She installed fans, heaters, humidity controls. She learned to groom them daily, to prevent wool block, to harvest fiber every 90 days. The costs added up fast. The equipment, the electricity, the specialized feed. Her savings dwindled while the rabbits ate and grew and produced fiber she processed by hand because she couldn't afford commercial equipment. Jim's friends started a pool at Hannigan's. Bar about when she'd give up. She heard about it from her neighbor, old Dutch Hartley, who still brought her vegetables from his garden like her mother had asked him to do before she died. They've got you lasting till August, Dutch said, setting down tomatoes. I took October. Figured you're stubborn. Thanks for the vote of confidence. Didn't say you were wrong. Just said you were stubborn. He looked at the barn, the rabbits visible through the open door. Your mama used to say the valley forgot more than it remembers. Old ways. Useful things. You think this is useful? I think you're not asking permission. That scares people. By June, she had her first harvest, 14 ounces of prime Angora from each rabbit, clouds of fiber so soft it felt like touching light. She washed it in her bathtub, dried it on racks in the spare bedroom, learned to card and spin using YouTube videos and old books she found at estate sales. The Heritage Mill processed 300 fleeces that month. Their parking lot was full of trucks every weekend. Sheep farmers lined up, the backbone of Montana's fiber industry, all running through the only commercial processor within 200 miles. Vera drove past once, her own fiber precious in bags, and didn't stop. They wouldn't understand. They didn't need to. At the July cattlemen's meeting, which she attended because her land gave her voting rights whether they liked it or not, Bill Kemper stood up during new business. "I'd like to suggest we offer support to struggling farms," he said, not looking at Vera. "Educational resources. Maybe intervention when folks are making choices that aren't sustainable." She didn't respond, didn't raise her hand, just sat there with her calloused fingers folded in her lap, while men who'd known her for decades talked around her like she was already gone. That night, she expanded her rabbitry to 30 animals. The fire started at 3 a.m. on a Tuesday in late September, an electrical fault in the Heritage Mill's main processing building. By dawn, 2 structures were destroyed, and the mill's owner was standing in the parking lot telling a news crew it would take 18 months to rebuild, maybe longer. By 9 a.m., every fiber farmer in western Montana was making panic phone calls. Vera was grooming Matilda, her best producer, a doe with wool like silver fog, when her phone rang. Unknown number. "Ms. Moss? This is Patricia Whitmore. I run a sheep operation over in Ravalli County. How can I help you? I heard you process your own fiber. Angora, right?" "That's right. I've got 40 fleeces that were supposed to go to Heritage next week. Now I'm looking at a year's worth of wool rotting in my barn. I was wondering if you could." Patricia stopped. "I know it's different from rabbit fiber, but I'm desperate. Could you process sheep's wool?" Vera looked at her equipment. Drop spindles, a small drum carder, everything scaled for personal use. "I appreciate you calling, but I don't have commercial capacity. Could you teach me to process it myself?" That stopped her. "You want to learn?" "I want to survive. Heritage burning means I've got no income stream until they rebuild. If I can process my own wool, sell direct to hand spinners, I might make it through." Vera thought about Karen's laugh at the feed store, about Bill Kemper's intervention suggestion, about 8 months of being the punchline to jokes she wasn't supposed to hear. "Come Saturday morning," she said. "Bring 1 fleece and something to take notes with." Patricia arrived with 3 other women, sheep farmers, all facing the same crisis. They stood in Vera's kitchen like supplicants, watching her demonstrate basic carding, explaining fiber preparation, showing them what she'd taught herself from books and failure. "It's slow," she warned. "And processing means you're trading time for money." "We've got time," said a woman named Beth, who ran 200 head outside Missoula. "What we don't have is options." By the second week, 12 farmers were attending Saturday workshops. By the third, Vera had people driving from Idaho and Wyoming. The women came first. They had less pride to swallow, or maybe just more practice doing what needed doing instead of what looked impressive. Then the men started showing up. Bill Kemper came on a Thursday afternoon, hat in his hands, jaw tight. Vera was processing a rabbit harvest, her hands steady in wool that caught the light like spun clouds. "Vera, got a minute?" She didn't look up. "Seems like you do. I've got sheep. Not many, just 50 head my daddy ran. Kept them after we went to cattle." He paused. "Heritage burning. I'm stuck. I was hoping you might share some knowledge. You suggested intervention. Educational resources for folks making unsustainable choices." His neck went red. "I was an ass." "Yes. I'd like to learn. If you're willing." She studied him, saw genuine need behind the pride, saw a man who dismissed her discovering that circumstances didn't care about his opinions. Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. Come ready to work. By October, Vera's kitchen had become a classroom. 37 farmers cycling through each week, learning what the Heritage Mill had made unnecessary. How to process their own fiber, sell direct, build relationships with hand spinners and small manufacturers who paid premium prices for quality. Marin called, voice tight with something Vera eventually recognized as admiration. "Mom, there's an article about you in the Montana Stock Grower. They're calling you a fiber revolution pioneer. It's just teaching. It's more than that. People are saying you saved small farms that would have gone under." Vera looked at her rabbits through the window, 73 animals now. A breeding program that produced fiber she could barely keep up with. "I saved myself. I'm just sharing what I learned. That's called leadership, Mom." After they hung up, Vera went to check the evening harvest. The rabbits murmured when she approached. Soft sounds, recognition. Her hands moved through their wool with the confidence of repetition, feeling for mats, checking skin, maintaining the health that made everything else possible. Dutch stopped by with winter squash. Heard Bill Kemper's taking your classes. He is. World's gone sideways when Bill Kemper admits he needs help from someone he called crazy. He never called me crazy to my face. That make it better? She smiled. No, but I'm not doing this for apologies. The Heritage Mills insurance settlement came through in November. 18 months to rebuild, confirmed. The owner called Vera personally, asked if she'd consider consulting on a small-scale processing addition, something for specialty fibers, for producers who wanted more control. I'm a rabbit farmer, Vera said. Not a consultant. You're the only person in 3 states who kept producing when we went down. That's worth something. She thought about it. Send me the plans. Oh look. That weekend, 42 farmers showed up for workshops. They filled her kitchen, her living room, her porch. They brought fleeces and questions and the desperate gratitude of people whose livelihoods had nearly vanished. Patricia Whitmore pulled Vera aside. You know what you've done, right? You've shown us we don't need the mill. Not completely. We can control our own product. That's not revolution, Vera said. That's just farming. But she knew it was more. Knew it in the way the valley had shifted around her. The way people who'd laughed now asked for guidance. The way independence looked when you stopped waiting for systems to save you and built what you needed yourself. The letter arrived in February. Montana Fiber Arts Cooperative embossed across the top. 12 farmers, including Patricia, Beth, and surprisingly, Bill Kemper, had pulled resources to purchase commercial processing equipment. They wanted Vera to manage it. Salary plus percentage. Patricia explained over coffee in Vera's kitchen. He taught us to process. Now teach us to run a real operation. Vera looked at the offer. Real money. Stability. Recognition from the same community that had written her off. I appreciate this. But I'm a rabbit farmer. Bill shifted in his chair. Vera, you're more than that now. Whether you meant to be or not. I meant to survive. That's all. You did more, Beth said quietly. You showed us how. After they left, disappointed but understanding, Vera walked out to the rabbitry. 73 animals, each one cataloged, tracked, part of a breeding program that produced fiber she sold for $28 an ounce to hand spinners who ordered 6 months in advance. Her waiting list had 200 names. That evening, Jim showed up. First time since the divorce, standing in her driveway like he needed permission to exist on land that used to be partly his. Vera. She was cleaning water bottles. Jim, I heard about what you're doing. The workshops. The farmers you've helped. Did you want something? I wanted to say I was wrong. About the rabbits. About you not being able to manage alone. She looked at him. Really looked. Saw a man who'd aged badly. Who discovered that starting over at 53 with someone who didn't know his failures wasn't the freedom he'd imagined. You were wrong about a lot of things, she said. Not angry. Just factual. I know. But you being wrong doesn't make me right. It just makes me myself. He nodded, lost. Karen said you turned down the cooperative job. I'm a farmer, not an administrator. Always were stubborn. No, Jim. I was quiet. There's a difference. You just never learned it. After he left, diminished, searching for absolution, she didn't know him. Vera went back to work. A doe was due for harvesting. Her wool perfect, ready. Vera's hands moved through the familiar motion. Gentle strokes, careful cutting. Well, that came away like clouds being gathered. Marin came home in March, quit her Seattle job, moved into the refurbished bunkhouse. I want to learn, she said. The business side. Help you expand. I'm not expanding. Mom, you have a 200-person waiting list, which means I have a sustainable business at current capacity. But I could work myself to death chasing growth. Or I could do what I'm doing, which works. Vera softened. But I could use help managing orders. If you're serious. They built it together over the next months. A website, a newsletter, a small online community of spinners who traded patterns and techniques. Vera taught workshops 1 Saturday a month, not for survival now, but because sharing knowledge felt right. The Heritage Mill reopened in June, bigger and modernized. They'd added the specialty processing wing Vera had consulted on, small batch, fiber-specific, expensive. Most of the farmers went back to commercial processing. Some didn't. Patricia and Beth and 11 others kept hand processing, kept selling direct, kept the independence Vera had modeled. They formed their own small cooperative, run from Best Barn, profitable in ways that had nothing to do with scale and everything to do with quality. Bill Kipper stopped by in July with a bottle of wine and an apology that had taken him 8 months to properly form. I've been thinking about what I said. About intervention, educational resources, ancient history, Bill. Maybe, but I want you to know, you taught me more than fiber processing. You taught me about listening, about not assuming I know better just because I've always done things a certain way. She accepted the wine. Keep your sheep. 50 head. Selling to hand spinners now. Not enough to retire on, but enough to remember why my daddy loved them. After he left, Vera walked her land. 40 acres that had run cattle for decades. Now home to 73 rabbits whose fiber was so prized she could barely keep up with demand. The valley rolled away in all directions, mountains sharp against the sky, land that held memory and possibility in equal measure. Marin joined her at the fence. Mom? Someone from the agricultural extension called. They want to feature you in a sustainable farming program. What's it pay? It's exposure. Does it pay? Marin laughed. You're impossible. Unpractical. That night, after Marin went to her bunkhouse, after the rabbits settled into their evening routines, Vera sat on her porch with tea and watched the sun drop toward the bitterroots. The valley had called her crazy, then dismissed her, then needed her, then tried to claim her as proof of something larger than she'd ever intended. But intention didn't matter. Results did. Soil under her boots, fiber in her hands, a business that fed her on her own terms. She hadn't saved Montana's fiber industry. She'd just refused to drown when the systems everyone else depended on burned down. The vindication wasn't in the apologies or the job offers or the article that called her a pioneer. It was in the rabbits themselves, thriving, producing, doing exactly what she'd known they could do from the beginning. It was in the farmers who'd learned to stand independent. It was in the quiet satisfaction of being right when being right meant survival. Vera Moss finished her tea, her calloused hands wrapped around the warm mug, her face weathered by Montana sun and the particular grace that comes from proceeding forward when everyone says you can't. Tomorrow, 3 more farmers were coming to learn. The work continued. The fiber grew. And Vera, as always, would be there at dawn, not proving anything, not leading any revolution, just farming, on her own terms, devastatingly, completely right.